Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show, more particularly the Parsha and Prose series that I do on a weekly basis with my dear friend, my co-host, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, very well. And, I like the winter, but when the winter comes, I always find it a little bit threatening. The cold outside and the atmosphere is, I don't know, I find it a little bit more gloomy. But there is a reason for the season.
And that rhymes, actually. When you make Aliyah, where will you live in Israel?
I lived in many places, but when we will be back in Israel, I hope to live in Yerushalayim. There is nothing like Yerushalayim, nothing.
What is it about Yerushalayim that you love?
It's just the atmosphere. It's just the atmosphere. You go outside, it say that Yerushalayim abnuya ke'ir shechubra layachda, which means Jerusalem is rebuilt, and it's like a city which is combined of many pieces. That's a verse in Tehillim. But I feel quite the same when I go to Yerushalayim. You get Jews from all over the world, and sometimes even non-Jews, and it's such if you walk like 1 kilometer in Jerusalem from one side to another, you will find the most fascinating people on your way. And if you smart enough to stop and maybe to ask a question and maybe to start a schmooze with someone, your life are going to be so much more enriched, because every person or many people on the streets have a unique story. You could do the podcast, just sitting in the streets of Yerushalayim, one after the other. You are going to see amazing people everywhere.
I agree. Now, I was born in Canada in 1960. I was born in a city called Kitchener, which is about an hour and a half west of Toronto. My father was the rabbi there. My mother was the rebbetzin, and I speak about them often. I have a tremendous love for this country as well. And I am very grateful for having been born and raised in Toronto, mostly in Canada, because of the freedoms that the country has to offer. I know people are critical of Canada more so today, that it's not the same country. And I would hazard to guess that that is the case. Things are changing. It's more violent than ever. And I hope that we're able to stymie that. But I do know, and I was thinking about this last night, that I'm able to actualize myself in Canada. I'm able to bring out my gifts. And if I want to launch a new initiative, and usually it'll catch on. And that is because the country allows for that entrepreneurialism, the development of thought, the development of ideas, the development of character. Now, I see that you're wearing the poppy, which is a symbol, a very important symbol that we wear around this time, which is November 11th, which is yesterday, on Memorial Day. So I like that you're wearing it. It's very beautiful. It always falls off my suits. That's the thing about poppies. You got to buy a bunch of them. But tell me, Rabbi, what's your affinity or what's your feeling about the poppy?
I think it's very simple. First of all, we have to be thankful and grateful for the people who gave their life for a free world. Part of the problem with the young generations today is that they get this idea of freedom as something which is muvan me'elav. It's like, of course, it's granted, but it's not. And they were not born 80 years ago, it's true. But we have to learn what America and Canada and the Commonwealth people stood for, because me and you would not be able to speak today if not the soldiers who gave their life in Europe in order to maintain free world. And I want my students to know that I appreciate it because I want them to appreciate it. So I don't think that Medinat Israel actually would be today if not the sacrifice of many people who maintain and sacrifice their life for a free world. This is number one. Number two, I am a Canadian. I am a Canadian too. Again, obviously, my past is more rooted in Israel, but I do appreciate many things that Canada gave me. And I think that you have to show citizenship. It's important for yourself, first of all, and to create a society that has common goals and common ideals and common past and common understanding of why we are here. And all these start to be in danger, unfortunately, in the last few centuries, maybe. So I can do what I can do. I'm an educator. I want to educate people. And I want people like you to ask me why I'm wearing it. I want my students to know that it's important to me, and I want it to be important for them.
Well, what do you appreciate about Canada and what it has given you?
Many things. First of all, kind of freedom. You know, once you are in Israel, Chas v'chalila, you will not hear from me one bad word, but about Israel. But certainly, where you have a Jewish community and it's just a Jewish community, immediately it turned to be sections, sectionality. Like this one thinks like this, and this one. You have to find a camp that you belong to. Canada freed me from this because honestly, in Israel, I could not find myself exactly where I am. I identified a little bit with this group and this group and this group, and at the end of the day, I was required to identify with one camp, and it's against my personality, to be honest with you. Once I came to Canada, I could be the real Shlomo Gemara I am, like a person of culture, obviously of Torah, and in many, many ways, it helped me to bring the inner side of me to the outside. Even in education, once you are in Israel, where you are identified with one camp, it's very, very hard to find the merits and the rights of another camp. Here, I never had this problem. And to me, personally, it was extremely important. So I love many, many things in Canada. The people, the opportunities, the niceness of people here, the kindness. Again, Canada today is not what used to be 30 years ago when we arrived here for the first time, because we came to Canada twice. But the first time was in '93. Then we went back to Israel and came back. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit worried about it. I am worried about it when I see things that I never saw before.
Such as?
Finding a parking spot in the mall, and how people sometimes cut you and even say something, sometimes even anti-Semitic in nature. I saw other things like lack of culture. There is a Canadian culture, and we lose it. And every time that I go, and again, I'm not a person who likes to find bad things. I always like to look on the positive, but I cannot ignore the fact that people are less kind to each other, sometimes a little bit more aggressive than it used to be.
Is that
Un-Canadian. It's un-Canadian, let's put it this way.
is that the inevitable development of Toronto, let's say specifically as a metropolitan center?
It was a metropolitan center even before. When I came here, I remember the first thing that we learned was that all the policemen in Toronto are speaking 103 languages. That was for me like, wow. I told you many times I thought about Toronto as the utopian story of Migdal Bavel, where all the people want to be together and to serve each other. What I see in the last few years is the second part of the story of Migdal Bavel, how things start to crumple and to disunity in many ways. And I will tell you one thing from Jewish history. The Jews are always the first to be the barometer of change. And when Jews feel less safe, it means that it's not a Jewish problem, it's a problem of culture around us. But we, unfortunately, always the first one to feel the change of winds in the world. And I think we are at this point here in Canada. Students who are going to university, people who are working on the streets, we can feel that it's not what it used to be.
You're very identifiably Jewish and religious. Have you been the recipient, if you will, of anti-Semitism?
I would say not in your face completely, but yes, slurs and people who spoke in disdain, and yes, I had few cases in the last 2 years. Yeah.
Rabbi, this past week we saw a debacle in Amsterdam where Israeli soccer fans who were supporting Maccabi Tel Aviv, I believe it was playing in Amsterdam, and they lost, were attacked by thugs. They were described as Muslims and thugs by the mayor of Amsterdam. What happened there?
I have no idea, but I'm so not surprised, to be honest with you. I think it will happen again and again. You will see more and more cases like this. These are already 2 years that, not 2 years, but since October 7th, especially, not that it wasn't before, cases in France, for example, happened 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years ago. But especially after October 7th and everything that these people are reading about Israel and the genocide that is taking place in Gaza, I actually wonder why it did not happen before. But I can assure you 100%, I'm not a Navi, I'm not a prophet, but you will see more pictures like this in the future. So what exactly happened, why they started it, I think it was well planned in advance. They want to show who is the balabos, who is the person who owns the public space. And about Netherlands, I want to tell you one thing which is very important. Do you know what was a city in Europe that relatively to the number of Jews, most of the community was sent to Eastern Europe and never came back? It was not Warsaw, it was not Krakow in Poland. The city that the smallest number of Jews survived was Amsterdam. People don't know it, but this is, I believe, a fact. I heard it once in a lecture in Yad Vashem, so I believe that the person who brought it had all the facts. And it was the only city in the world that the Dutch themselves brought the list and the addresses of the Jews to the Nazis because they wanted, to do, just to be okay. They were told to do so, so they did so. So I love many of the Dutch people. They, especially, some of them came explicitly to the side of Israel. But at the same time, I can't believe that the culture can change very quickly. And this indifference, being idle where things are happening around you, we just saw it one more time this week. And I am very concerned that Amsterdam is just the precursor of many things that we might see in Europe. And in fact, Israel recommended people to take to be very cautious and to look around when they are going to Europe. This is 80 years after the Holocaust. Can you believe that we just see things like this again? Well, the world does not change much.
Yeah, I think this will be a precursor to changes of Israelis and Jews in general going to Europe. I think that the Israelis, some of them were very, very silly in terms of how they showed their disdain for the other team and how they showed their disdain for Palestinians. They apparently, a few of them burnt flags. They can't do that. They just can't do that. Whatever their feelings are, if they want to express it in a place that's safe. It's not safe in Europe right now for Israelis. It's just not.
And listen, we are going to a bigger problem because Europe, why these waves of immigration are coming? Because you have to remember that Europe did a terrible mistake and they will pay dearly for this mistake. Today, Europe is getting smaller and smaller. Namely, the original people of Europe don't bring kids to the world. In some countries like Greece or Italy and others, if you have a couple, they are going to have 1.3 children, which means the population is going down and down and down. Now, this creates a serious economic problem because pension, for example, is built upon the assumption that the younger generation is going to pay for the older generation, and you are going to run the pension system on new manpower that is going to contribute to the country. Now, when the country is getting smaller and smaller, you don't have these people and you have to bring others from other countries. Now, who's coming from other countries? People were looking for a job sometimes or looking for better conditions. What happened was that many of the people who came only for the welfare system. So instead of like solving one problem, you created a second one. And since many of the immigrations came with a quite ideological idea, they stand for certain ideas and certain community and certain values, there is no way that they will integrate into the general society. So you create today in Europe, there are places where the police don't go inside because it's like enclave, it's like a country within a country. And you know what, people, there are communities that are growing and eventually they will be the majority or at least significant minority. This is going to change the face of Europe and other places maybe too.
Rabbi, today we got news that 5 IDF soldiers were killed.
Oh no, I did not hear it about the animate. I did not hear anything. Where?
In northern Gaza, and their names are Ori Katz, who was 20 years old, Nave Yair Asulin, 21 years old, Gary Zolat, 21, Ophir Eliyahu, 21, and so far the death toll in Gaza through the ground operations is 375. They should rest in peace. And I'd like to read a prayer.
It's terrible. I did not hear. I had a very busy morning. I taught and I did not hear. This is awful, awful news. Wow.
It's terrible. We call out to you with fervent plea and prayer to bless and protect the civilian men, women, and children brutally kidnapped by Hamas and held captive in Gaza, along with the members of Israel's defense forces missing in action or held captive. May it be your will speedily and soon to bring them out from darkness and the shadow of death. May the Holy One of blessing break their bonds, deliver them from their distress, and release them swiftly back to the loving embrace of their dear ones. Do all that must be done so that relief, rescue, and long life may be the lot of every one of the soldiers and the civilians who have been taken hostages. Act on their behalf, Lord. Take up their cause without delay, so that you fulfill through them your verse from Isaiah. Those redeemed by the Lord will return. They will enter Zion with singing and everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and a sighing will flee away. So may it be your will, and let us all say amen.
Amen. Wow, I just, on my other screen, I can see that also in Ria, two people
Yeah.
were killed. This is not a good day.
There was a
This,
missile that landed in Naria, and two people were killed indeed. So we should give our learning today, the zchut of our learning, towards those who have passed, and to their families, and to the hostages in Israel. Agreed?
not only that, one of the reasons that I agreed to do this podcast is to educate. To educate. I do believe that our survival is based on education. It's actually said in our Parsha when Hashem is sharing the news about the destruction of Sodom with Avram. He said what I consider one of the key verses in the Torah. He said, "Leman yedativ," I know Abram, asher yetzaveh et beito ve'et banav acharav. He is going to instill and to educate his household and his children after him, לעשות דרך צדקה ומשפט, to behave in justice, to be just, and in charity or helping others. And what you see here, that many societies have system of justice, charity, helping others. But there is something very special about this verse. It says, because Abraham is going to teach it to his children. Because some people are fantastically good and helping others. But the commitment of Abraham to make sure that it's not going to end with him, but he's going to make sure that all the people coming from his household, 4 generations to come, until me and you, we are going to be educated, לעשות צדקה ומשפט. So our podcast is just part of it. We try to educate, we try to refresh ideas, we try to explain why we are here, why we are doing what we do, to be inspired from the Torah, to be inspired by the miracle that is called Medinat Israel. And I hope that we do, even if it's a small part, I'm very proud of it.
You know, in light of what you're saying, Rabbi Sachs, Zacharenu Livracha, he wrote about the Akedah, and the Akedah represents Abraham taking his son Isaac to be slaughtered as a sacrifice for God. That's what we mean when we say the Akedah. So Rabbi Sachs wrote a very interesting thing. He said, at the dawn of the Jewish time, God put Abraham and Sarah through these trials so that neither they nor their descendants would ever take children for granted. Every child is a miracle. Being a parent is the closest we get to God, bringing life into being through an act of love. What a beautiful thought.
Beautiful thought. I think the first one to express it so beautifully was Rav Soloveitchik, actually. And I recommend everyone to look on the internet. There is a very interesting exchange of letters between the Cardinal of Boston, who attended a ceremony of Pidyon Haben, and he was fascinated by it, and he sent a letter to Rabbi Soloveitchik, who lived all his life in Boston, to ask him about it. And he said, actually, Pidyon Haben, where the father buy back, so to speak, his child from the Cohen, is repetition of the Akedah, who comes to teach us exactly what you said. Our children is a deposit that was given us by God, and we have lots of responsibility to raise them well. And this was the main message of the Akedah. Your child is my child. And when I give it to you, it comes with a great responsibility of education and raising your children right. But I think it's a profound idea, and it gives a new definition to the word of parenting.
Just give us a context for a moment. What is a Pidyon Haben?
Pidyon Haben, there is a very interesting mitzvah that the firstborn, if it's a male, after 30 days from the day he was born, there is a ritual where basically the child belonged to a Kohen, to a priest, someone who came from the Levites, like me. I had the merit to do Pidyon Haben at the Kohen many times. And in the ritual, the father buy back, so to speak, the child by giving the Kohen 5 beautiful coins of silver. And then the boy belonged back to the parents, and the Kohen get the 5 Canadian dollars. By the way, you can buy it in Scotiabank downtown. It's exactly what the 5 slaim are, which is required by the Torah. So I have few coins. If you are a Kohen and you ever need it, come to me. I will give it to you for the ceremony. And it's quite a rare mitzvah because, first of all, it's happening only in 50% of the cases, right? Because it has to be, the firstborn has to be a male. And then there are certain laws, because if one of the parents came from the tribe of Levi, then you don't do it. And it's quite common. So in all my life, I did it, I think, 5 or 6 times. But the most moving one, listen to this, I remember it when I was in Israel in 98. In the middle of davening, I was in a yeshiva there, came a guy who was in his 60s. And he asked for a rabbi, and I asked him, what does he want? So he said he just realized that he's a Bechor, he's the firstborn, and he's sure 100% that his father never did Pidyon Haben to him. He came from Russia. Who knew what Pidyon Haben is? And he just hears like in a radio show or something like this about this mitzvah, and he's 100% sure that he's chayav in the mitzvah. His father had to do it. His father did not do it. He has to do it. And on the spot, we did it. I had in my office like these beautiful 5 coins. The Israeli Society for Coins had once in the 50s making these 5 coins, legal coins. And it was in my office. We brought it to the shul, and in front of all the students, we did Pidyon Haben.
Wow. That's beautiful. Is your eldest a boy?
I'm the eldest one. Yeah, I'm also firstborn, but I'm a Kohen myself, so we didn't need to do it.
That's my question. You can't redeem a coin from a coin, right?
But my father, he should live until 120. A month ago, he did Pidyon Haben to the grandchild of my sister, because her grandchild came from 2 parents who are not Levites, and they had the firstborn. So my father had the merit and the privilege to do Pidyon Haben to his great-grandson.
It's fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the series is called Parsha Prose. And as you know, if you've joined us in the past, essentially what we do is we teach and we learn the Parsha Shavua, which is the portion of the week. This week it happens to be Vayera. And we do it through the lens of classic literature, this week through Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov. Let me tell you a little bit about both, and we'll launch into some significant questions.
By the way, if you do a summary of Brother Karamazov, it's going to take you like 2 podcasts, just the summary.
I've managed to whittle it down. I think you'll be satisfied. Parshat Vayera, Genesis 18:1 to 22:24, is a deeply significant and dramatic portion. It is indeed in the book of Genesis. It's centered around Abraham's encounter with God, his unwavering faith, and his role as a moral and spiritual leader. The Parsha opens with God appearing to Abraham in the form of 3 visitors, bringing the promise of a son to the elderly Sarah. They are angels, actually. This moment is followed by Abraham's intercession for the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, where he pleads with God to spare the cities if any righteous people can be found. He starts with 50, he goes all the way down to 10. The narrative then turns to the destruction of Sodom, the saving of Lot and his family, which is very dramatic, and the tragic story of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. The portion concludes with the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, in which Abraham's faith is tested to the ultimate limit when he is commanded to sacrifice his son Isaac, only for God to intervene at the very last moment. Throughout Vayera, themes of divine promise, justice, mercy, and the testing of faith emerge, highlighting the complex relationship between God and humanity and the pivotal role of Abraham in the unfolding of the covenant. Brothers Karamazov. It was written by Fyodor Dostoevsky and was first published in 1880. It's a profound philosophical novel that explores deep questions of faith, morality, free will, and nature of human existence. The story revolves around the lives of the Karamazov brothers, Dmitry, Ivan, and Alyosha, each representing different facets of the human condition. Dmitry is the passionate and impulsive eldest, Ivan the intellectual skeptic, and Alyosha the devout and compassionate novice monk. The novel centers on the murder of their father, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, a morally corrupt and hedonistic man, and the subsequent investigation and trial of Dmitry, who is actually accused of the crime. As the plot unfolds, the brothers' personal struggles, relationships, and spiritual journey comes to the forefront, raising existential questions about faith, doubt, justice, and the possibility of redemption. Through vivid characters and philosophical dialogues, the brothers Karamazov probes the complexities of human nature and the moral dilemmas that define the human experience, making it one of Dostoevsky's most celebrated and enduring works. Rabbi, just to give it a little context here, Dostoevsky was known as sort of the philosophical or the psychological author. Tolstoy was more sociological in nature.
Right. That's very good definition. Listen, first of all, we have to.
By the way, that's from Jordan Peterson, not from me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's very interesting. I never heard it, but he's absolutely right. The truth is that if we see what happened in the 19th century in Russia, there is like a burst of excellent literature. And obviously it came with all the changes that already were like, under current changes that were just waiting to burst out with the Bolsheviks and, the Tsar kind of monarchy for such a long time. And Russia, if you talk about waking up or the woke culture, the woke was this intelligentsia, this circles of authors and artists, which is unique because you find so many of them in such a short time. And obviously, Dostoevsky was maybe the most important one, in my opinion. A person really, especially in the brother Karamazov, he deals with the most important philosophical question. Many people don't know, but one of the people that were heavy influenced by Dostoevsky was Freud. Our brother, he was Jewish, and I don't know if he caused him for the theory about relationship between sons and their fathers, and all the theory that he came from. I don't know how many of them last today in modern psychology, but certainly it shaped the world of psychology. And Freud believed that Dostoevsky managed to bring his own complexities to this book, and it's proved many things about the life of Dostoevsky himself. For example, his epilepsy attacks that, according to Freud, were related to his guilt relationship with his father, who passed away quite young. So not only the literature itself was important, but really the influence on the thinking of many great people who dealt in other disciplines.
Rabbi, I've asked you in the past about your choice of novels and authors, and why you specifically chose them, some of whom were purported to be anti-Semites. Now, Dostoevsky's views on Jews were typical of anti-Semitism, common in the 19th century Russia. His works are a mixture of both the prejudice of his time and a broader philosophical inquiry into human nature, suffering, and redemption. But suffice it to say, whichever way you cut it, Dostoevsky does represent Jews in a stereotypical way through some of his writings. So again, I'm going to ask you a question that we've dealt with in the past. Were you at all hesitant to go this route because of his anti-Semitism?
I was not prepared for this question, and therefore I want to be very careful with my answer. Anti-Semitism, in part, is not only anti-Semitism, it's anti the other one, the one who does not belong. And many, many times, this kind of hate, fear of the stranger is because people have a certain idea how the world should be, and when they face something different, they get into defense, and the best defense is the attack. We have to remember something very, very important. Dostoevsky lived in the richest area of thoughts, of changes that were supposed to change the world less than 100 years after. And here we see the Jewish people who were people that just, were very different. Let's put it this way. They were, many of them in poverty, many of them were not part of the society that he really appreciated. So I don't want to justify anti-Semitism in any way or shape, but you have to remember that this is not the anti-Semitism of today, where Jews are successful, where Jews are seems as really people who contribute a lot to the world. In the eyes of the high echelon in Russia, in other places in Europe, Jews were the stranger, were the people who actually tried to take from the country and not to contribute to the country, which was not true. That's why we call them anti-Semites. But education and the way Jews presented themselves at this time contributed to the anti-Semitism. And Dostoevsky saw things from a very narrow perspective. He saw not the entire spectrum, but he saw very, very narrow part of the spectrum. And therefore, again, I don't want to justify anything. He saw the Jews not the way we see ourselves today. It was very, very different. And hence, Tolstoy was not very different, for example, but he wrote an amazing piece about the Jews and their contribution to the world. So these were people which, on one hand, were very influenced by their education, by the church, by the society they lived in. But at the same time, they were smart enough to see the uniqueness of the Jewish people. We have to remember this one.
It's a very interesting answer.
I know, and I hope I'm not going to
Get some letters.
to get bad critiques about it, because I don't try to understand anti-Semites. Don't misunderstand me. But I always remind myself that the anti-Semitism of the 19th century in Russia was different than the anti-Semitism that we do today. Because today, there is no one reason, even upon your education and your family, and there is no reason to hate Jews. You actually have to admire them. And I would say you have to admire not only Jews, but especially Zionism, which is an amazing story of a nation that managed to live in oppression for 2,000 years and never forgot their dream to go back to their country. And in 70 years, Israel became, in many, many areas, like a powerhouse. Who could believe it? Like the world had to stand and to read the story about Israel and to be inspired. Instead, they became anti-Semite. That's really bad. But what Dostoevsky saw in the Jewish people was something very, very different. We have to remember that.
Rabbi, I want to stay in sort of the context of anti-Semitism, and I want to ask you the following question. You find in this parsha there is a type of trup, a note called the shalshelet. So I'm going to leave that description of the shalshelet up to you, but suffice it to say that it reflects a certain type of ambivalence of the character of which it is connected to. In this parsha, it's the ambivalence of Lot, right? Why? Because Lot decides that he is going to look in the distance, find a place to live, and that place happens to be Sodom. He's sitting at the front of the gate when the three angels arrive, which means he was a judge there, which means that he was accepted within that environment. Yet, he was also the nephew of Avrum, right? Therefore, he harbored some of the values of kindness that Avram had taught him, hence taking in the three angels into his home. That's an ambivalence. Some people call it a cognitive dissonance, right? What I was thinking was when I was learning about the Shalshelet, is that the Jewish people today? Are we in a situation where we live abroad, we live in the diaspora, we're well accepted in so many ways. We are judges, we are lawyers, we are doctors, we are mayors, and we rise up in the echelons of politics and so on. But yet, do we actually belong?
This is a fantastic comparison because we are really in a state of shalshelet. The hesitation, who we are, who are we? And I speak to my students a lot about it because many of them see themselves as Canadians, as part of the greater world with Jewish flavor. I think something that happened in October 7th, people started to understand, no, we are Jews with the flavor of the world. And the more we understand it, the better is going to be our future. We cannot be delusional about who we are. We are not exactly part of the world. But at the same time, we and I'm talking about the people who live here, we are part of the world around us. And just to decide to make Aliyah, it's exactly like you describe it, the shalshelet. Like until you pronounce the word, you see the hesitation within you. So yes, we are kind of Lot, who refuse to live and to understand the severity of the situation and to understand that the golden age is over. It's an excellent. I love this comparison to the situation of Lot, and I believe that it's a very true one.
Thank you. In Vayera, Abraham's unwavering faith in God is tested during the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. In the Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov struggles with the existence of a benevolent God in the face of human suffering. How do the characters of Abraham and Ivan represent different responses of faith and doubt, and what do their experience suggest about the nature of belief?
Well, I would say this is a story of Bereshit. The question is how much God involved in the world, and what does that mean? Because to me, and I think that many will agree, that the most powerful statement in Brothers Karamazov is something that go in Russian, something like this. Если Бога нет, то все позовильно. I hope that I pronounce it probably, which means he tells Ivan, you taught me, the one who actually killed his father, you taught me if there is no God, then everything is permitted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the story of Sodom, that's the story of Bereshit, that Avram tried to tell people, if there is no God, everything is permitted. So not only about the monotheistic belief in one God, it's something that the society is going to be protected if society knows that the rules are divine. There are certain expectations from the creator how to live your life. And in this regard, I think Dostoevsky just made this point in a magnificent way. If God does not exist, then you can kill your father. Then you can kill people around you. You can be the ugliest person. You can ignore your two wives like his father. I think it's a strong message and that should resonate until this very moment. What is a world with no God?
Would the following quote be in sync with what you just discussed? This is also found in the book. The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for.
Yeah. I find this, the quote that I brought from Dostoevsky, Если Бога нет, to все позовильно. It's very interesting because in Russia, the waking up of the Jewish community after 60 years of Stalinism was with one song that was very, very famous at the time. Niet niet nikavo, koma boge ad navo, Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Do you remember this song?
No, I don't.
Niet niet
No.
nikavo, koma boge ad navo, ay 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 ay. And in Russia, it like spread, and it was the beginning of the movement of going outside Russia, which challenge actually the main thought of the communist regime, who tried to eliminate churches and obviously synagogues and religious life. It was exactly the opposite. There is a God, there is one God, and indeed they were successful.
Did you learn Russian to understand these novels?
Absolutely, yes. When I read Anna Karenina that we didn't touch yet, I knew that I have to read it in Russian. Now, it never happened yet, and we are talking already about like 10 or 12 years. I read only one chapter, the first chapter in Anna Karenina, but the idea was, yes, I want to see the Russian literature from, like, with no translation. Translation always takes something. Sometimes it's a huge issue. Little I knew, I was silly at the time, that Russian is one of the hardest languages, one of the richest languages, and I think in this Gilgul, as they say, in this life, I'm not sure that I will be able to read any serious Russian novel. But our dreams are also important.
Yes, they are. Am I correct that you appreciate much of Russian culture?
Very much so.
I see.
Very much so. I feel many, many times that I was supposed to born in Russia somewhere, and I don't know. I feel, and when I speak to Russian people, I always get the same idea. Um, they are cultured people. They went through the real challenges of life, and they came strong. Um, I do believe that there is a reason why the Russian army defeated the Nazi army. So I'm not a great, fan of Stalin and all his friends. On the contrary, but there is something in the Russian character
Hmm.
that make them very, very strong. And since I try to be balanced, um, I am thankful for the victory of the Russian army, the Red Army, on the Nazis. We have sometimes to separate, certain aspects from other ones. So Russia was terrible for the Jews there, but at the same time, we have to see all part of the picture. The Red Army defeated the Nazi army, and I think we have to be grateful for this. And we have to be grateful for the fact that Russia voted for Israel in 47 when there was a decision of the UN. And by the way, it was the only decision that the American and the Russian agreed upon, which I see as the hand of God, like staying there. The only decision in history that both Russia and the US agreed upon: the Jews deserve a country of their own. And I think we have to be grateful for this.
Rabbi, in Vayera, the parsha that we're learning, Avram pleads with God to spare Sodom if righteous people can be found there, grappling with the idea of divine justice. In the Brothers Karamazov, Ivan challenges the concept of divine justice, especially in light of innocent suffering. How do both work excuse me, how do both works engage with the tension between justice and mercy? And how do their characters deal with this dilemma?
Okay, so I really want to listen. As I said, the book, every chapter of the book, and there are courses in Russian literature of months, and they don't get into the depths of Brothers Karamazov. I want to talk about Elyosha, this brother who is the righteous one, let's put it this way, who always try to change things and to represent kindness and to resolve conflicts. And he reminds me in many, many ways, Avram Avinu. Because what was the point? The great mystery that I have about our Parsha is why Avram tried to convince God to spare Sodom. I think that if we would know about a place that encourage corruption, um, there is no system of justice in place, abusing the poor people, I would like this place to disappear. But Abraham, who actually is a pillar of kindness and always looking for the benefit of others, he's struggling with God, and he does not let him to destroy Sodom. Why? And I think the only answer possible is that Abraham believed that he can change the world with education. He believed that the people of Sodom never heard the messages that require them to be better people, and he thought that he can make the change. But God apparently knew better that there are people that sometimes they cross the point of return, and he believed that this is not going to happen. But Avram Avinu was the greatest believer in education and the ability of education to change people. So I don't think that Avram, and by the way, this is very, very different than Dostoevsky, because in Dostoevsky you find the idea of forgiveness and mercy, even when it's not justified. It's a very Christian idea. Avram does not say that. Avram does not say, just forgive them, just let them, they made a mistake, give them a second chance. Avram was not like Dostoevsky at all. But Avram came with a card in his hand and he said, I can change the world. I already proved that wherever I go, people are changing their mind. They behave differently. Let's try it with wisdom. And what did he ask God? Not to spare Sodom. He said, if there are 10 people, if it's in every city or the entire metropolitan, that's a machloket, a disagreement between Rashi and Raman, but this is not the point. He believed in the power of righteous people and great people to change their society. And in many ways, this message stays until this very day. Once you have heroes, once you have great people, sometimes they can change the society. In the case of Sodom, this was beyond repair, but only God knew it. Abraham tried to the last minute to bring the mercy of God in order to enable education. Not just the mercy of God, but the mercy of God, because believing that the great people, if they exist, can change a whole society around them. And I think it's a magnificent idea and magnificent thought.
How do righteous people do that, Rabbi?
Well, I think that every person who was born with Tzelem Elokim have something within him that want to be good. That's the understanding of Tzelem Elokim, in my opinion. Like
It
we all
created
good
in the image of
inside.
God. Yeah.
Exactly. And God is good, we are good. But many, many times people, have a way to mask this goodness with greed, with jealousy, with many things that they cover the goodness that is actually exists within them. What great people are doing, they're taking the masks. They are taking all these coverings of the goodness, and they show you that life is much more than just making money, bigger house, nicer car, and so on. They just, but by the way they live, they just help you to understand that the world is something very different than what you think what success means. And I know I met people, and you know what? Sometimes it was not the way they talked to me or they spoke or the beautiful drasha, just the way they lived their life made it clear that life is much more than just accumulating wealth and traveling the world. There is something much more sustainable and something that feed your neshama much more than just materialistic things. So I don't think that they work very hard to change things. They just help you to melt down all the covering that are on your heart and mind.
In terms of your understanding of what a tzaddik is, a righteous person, can they be found in the non-Jewish world as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that today we many times actually see them and hear them and are inspired by them. And sometimes they are very simple people who help others. It's very common in the Jewish community, and we know them because we live in the Jewish community. But I believe that great people, heroes of society, you can find everywhere. And the Torah never opposed this idea, by the way. As I said, what Avram did, unlike the children of Noach that you don't hear about, was to make sure that when he dies, his values and lifestyle does not disappear with him. Something that other people don't do. They might be great people, but their children are very, very different. And they don't see it as the most important commitment to make sure that the children, they behave exactly like them. This is the uniqueness about the Jewish community. We instill these values from one generation to another with lots of money, giving up lots of things in order to make sure that the next generation is going to be as much as he could to be like us, like our parents and grandparents.
Justice and tzedakah. So, Rabbi, I want to tell you a very interesting vort that, again, I got from Rabbi Sachs. The classic question, and you touched on this before, is how is it that Avraham Avinu challenged God about his decision to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Where does this come from? So the rabbi puts forward the idea. He says, "Far be it from you, shall not the judge of all the earth do justly?" Like even the language that Avraham used with God, I was a little shocked by it. I thought it was a bit of a mechutzav to say, God, you're going to deal with your world unjustly. It's rough language. So the rabbi says like this. He says that within Judaism, if it says in the Gemara, in a capital case, if the judges are unanimous in finding the plaintiff guilty, then the case is dismissed, right? So he continues that here God wanted Avraham to be the defense attorney, the other voice of justice. If God invites his own verdict to be challenged in this way, how much more so does he expect the verdict of a human court to be challenged? Right? It's not that God was open. It's not that God set up a situation where he felt Avram was being unjust himself in challenging him. Quite the opposite. He was offering Avram the opportunity to challenge him because he felt it was important that justice can only come when there is a true defense of it. I thought that was an interesting thought.
Very nice. Beautiful.
We are going to continue with our learning of Vayera through the lens of the Brothers Karamazov. Avram's intercession for Sodom shows a sense of moral responsibility for others, even for those who may not be righteous. In contrast, Dmitry Karamazov's impulsive action lead to a crime, and he is torn between guilt and innocence. How do both Avram and Dmitry grapple with their sense of moral duty, and what consequences follow from their actions?
The most important thing is the commitment of Avram to spread over his ideology, his values to the world. By the way, I think that this was the hardest part of the Akedah. Not only the idea of sacrificing your own son, but think about what would happen, theoretically, if the Akedah would be materialized. What all the people in the world, after seeing Avram working for years for compassion, for kindness, he shecht his own son, how the world is going to look upon it. Everything that he built will collapse. It will be a moral bankruptcy completely. And Avram did not ask questions because all his life mission was about to collapse. We have to understand it. And when we talk about nisayon, sometimes we have a nisayon to keep Shabbos, not to keep Shabbos. We have a nisayon to eat kosher, not to eat kosher. But a real nisayon, a real test for a person is something that you stood for all your life, and now it's going to be challenged. So think about this when we talk about the Akedah. Everything was about to collapse. This is a test. This is a test. Now, in the world of Ivan, for example, you can see that the entire idea is an individual one. How he deal with his ideas, if there is God, there is no God, and so on. But you don't see the need to spread it over. The only person who spread it over is Alyosha, in a way, the righteous brother, and the monk, cannot remember his name right now, that Alyosha was very influenced by. But you don't have this drive that I think is central to our religion of spreading goodness all over. Spread it. Don't keep it to yourself. Make sure that the world behaves differently. We are leaders. We are not just people who deal with our own abilities or disabilities. We have responsibility for the world around us. And this, to me, is the main difference between the brothers or Ivan or even Alyosha to Abraham. Abraham brought to the world a new idea that when you have the belief in God, it has to be the inheritance of the world entirely.
Rabbi, curious, Avram Avinu challenged God on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but he did not challenge God on taking his son to the Akedah. Why is that?
It's a great question. Why that? I do believe that if he would ask for his son, and he did not do it easily, we think like, okay, God told him to take Isaac, and he took him and, came back. Our sages describe a very different picture. Avram himself was torn. He knew that Hashem promised him that Beitzchak yikareh lecha zara, your descendants are coming from Yitzchak, and here God says something very different. Should you believe to God for the first time, for the second time? What's going on? We know that Avram was crying, and with him all the angels in the sky were crying. When we say the Slichot before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we ask God to remember the davening of Avram on Har Moriah. Not the Akedah, the davening of Avram. Why Avram was davening? He was davening to God that it will not materialize, So we have to remember this one, that the Akedah was a terrible thing for Avram. But if Avram would ask God, and the Torah will describe a debate between him and God for his own son, This will sound like Avram did not really establish a new ideology, but at the end of the day, he cares about himself and about his family and not about the world. He's not the person that God sent to the world to redeem the world in a way. So for the people of Sodom, had nothing to do with himself. Avram Avinu show us his real character. When it comes to his own son, he take a step away in order that the world will understand it's not something personal, it's not something about him, it's the obedience to God, which all humankind has to accept upon himself. That might be one answer. I'll be more than happy to hear others.
Just curious, Rabbi. We know that as Avraham was about to slaughter his son, the angel from heaven yelled out. I was wondering, when is it the angel's job to do this God's work, and when does God actually do it?
I think the angels are telling us that in creation itself, in the spiritual creation, there are conflicting values, which are not always just a conflict between the love for yourself and the love for your parents or the love for the people in the community. There are serious issues, spiritual issues, that our sages describe as sometimes a discussion between the angels and God, angels and human beings. So our sages are telling us, for example, that when the Torah was given, the angels came to God with complaint. How can you give the Torah to human beings? You know what is going to happen. They are like people who live and die, people with desires, sometimes bad desires. What does that mean? It means that indeed there is spiritual issue with giving something which is eternal in nature, like the Torah, to mortal people. There is really something that you have to address here, where on one hand, God wants to test Abraham. The angels represent the divine power of mercy, of compassion, of the importance of relationship between father and children, which is not just like the natural feeling that we have towards our children. There is something very spiritual here, immanent, that has to be addressed. What is the connection between children and their parents? How Hashem sometimes, and this is a bigger question, how Hashem allows sometimes for parents to lose their children. This is a huge issue. So Chachamim put it in the language or in the discussion of the angel with God. But really what's going on is a discussion about the spiritual principles of how this world really runs. And sometimes there are very, very difficult questions.
Indeed, there are. Just a couple more questions to wrap up this wonderful shiur, this wonderful class. A quote from Dostoevsky. I want your take on this quote. Each man is guilty of all the good he did not do.
Do you think he ever learned Talmud? Because, it says about the Nazir, the person who prohibited upon himself drinking wine,
Yes.
the Torah called him a sinner.
Yes.
And actually, this person is like a holy person. He does not drink wine. He separate himself from all the worldly pleasures. But the Torah calls him chote, a sinner. And our sages say something very much like Dostoevsky. Maybe he also learned Talmud. I don't know. He said he's named chote. The Torah called him chote, a sinner, because he prohibited upon himself drinking wine. Wine could be a wonderful thing that brings simcha to people, and he decided not to enjoy the world around him. I think it's quite similar to the quote from Dostoevsky, isn't it? That sometimes we are sinners when we don't take advantage on the wonderful world that God created for us. God created the world for us not only, to be to make our life miserable, and sometimes even understand it. That the role of God in the world is to tell you what you cannot do. On the contrary, God created a perfect world so we can enjoy the world. And when we don't take full advantage of it in a permissible way, of course, in a way that is not going to be destruction, um, we are sinners. We are sinners because God created it for us, and we actually declined enjoy it.
There's a little tiny phrase that's found in the beginning of the Parsha, and standing on its own, it has a punch to it. Standing within the context of the pasuk, an even greater effect. And the phrase or the line is simply, "Here I am." Tell me about that.
Well, listen, the whole psychology is built upon these three words. Here I am. What is I am? What is exactly who are we? Is it the people that we present to be? Is it something inside us? Is it about the here and now? Or it's something that maybe 5 minutes ago we were slightly different? Think about a person who is standing and davening in front of God, and 10 minutes later he's already in a board meeting or in the marketplace. What does that mean? Like, here I am. I think that's by itself is like open discussion of many sessions. Um, who we are, who are we? What do we stand for? What determine the I am? And listen, there are many books written about it in philosophy, in psychology. And I think that the sentence itself comes to a put a mirror in front of us so we can maybe start to answer this question. Who are we?
And the context here is that God was saying, "Okay, Abraham, where are you?" And then Abraham's response was, "Here I am." Right?
Here I am. I'm ready. I'm ready for the mission. And actually, there is a paradox in it because what he said, I'm nothing. I'm not I am. I'm just a vehicle to do what you want me to do. So there is a kind of like inter contradiction in saying here I am, when actually it means no, I'm nothing. I'm just actually waiting for what you have to tell me.
Would there be any kesher, any connection between this moment, God saying to Abraham, "Where are you?" He goes, "Here I am," and when God was looking for Cain, and a similar response?
I think it's the same question, and actually, I think that what Avram is doing here is kind of reversing the sin of Cain, because exactly what happened here is again a story about someone who is going to die, but one is a complete denial. Like Cain is like God asking, "Where are you?" And here he really means like, "Where are you?" The person that I created, the person who was one of the first human beings in the world. Where are you? And in the Akeda, it's exactly the opposite. Like someone is going to be killed, but here there is no denial or try to, repeal the decision of Hashem. Um, it's accepting it. And I'm here in front of you, ready for any mission you are going to give me. So in a way, it's exactly the opposite of what Cain did.
It's interesting because here I am, at first blush, seems like a lifelong quest. I could see someone on their deathbed, Admeva Esrim, saying, finally, yeah, here I am. This is it. This is who I am.
It's very true and very sad.
Rabbi, I know that you have a deep love of artificial intelligence, as does your daughter. who suggested that I go for real poetry rather than poetry from AI. And I've heeded her advice, by the way, but not this week.
Okay.
So I have asked artificial intelligence for a poem about Vayera through the lens of the Brothers Karamazov, and it goes as follows. In the shadow of the tent, the air is thick. Abraham waits, his heart both pure and sick. 3 men appear beneath the sun's cruel eye, a test, a trial, a question to belie. Will you believe, though all seems lost, they ask, as flames of faith consume the smallest task? The voices echo in the desert's night, a promise kept, yet hidden from the sight. Isaac, what of him, the child of joy, to whom the future speaks with trembling voice? His father hands upon his brow so still, the knife, the altar, trembling with God's will. Like Ivan's curse, the questions rise. Why, O Lord, do you command such sacrifice? The gods who play with fire, with blood and stone, leaving men to carry burdens alone. Abraham's heart beats heavy, full of doubt, yet in the silence faith will call him out. For he too asked in moments dark and grim, how can a world be good when it is filled with sin? And yet the child must live the promise real, as Isaac's life becomes the turning wheel. A test of love, of blind belief and pain, where answers lie in suffering refrain. Dostoevsky's hand could never trace the depth of love, the terror of grace, for in Vayera the covenant is sealed, not in the light of reason, but the soul's deep field. The brothers, like the angels, wrestle too. In their hearts they seek a truth they knew, a faith that stirs, that questions, that stands still, a paradox of love and human will. Aha. Do you really like it? Tell me if you don't.
It's quite interesting, and as I said, it's getting better and better. Just to end with a little Dvar Torah, that you hint to. When God approached Cain, he said, "Ei hevel achicha," where is your brother Abel? And here you say like, "Here I am." So take it, I am. So the AI, is kind of like combining the A Evel Achicha, here I am.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But this is only for late sanut, that we call it like to joke around.
Like silliness.
Listen, this week was very, very important to AI, I guess. As usual, I'm out of the race that is going in the stock market of AI stocks. But I can see that everything that today like touch the AI magic, like the price is going to is skyrocketing, and apparently the world is going to be very different in a short time because of the AI. I just hope for the better, that we will find maybe medicines to all kinds of diseases that we couldn't find before, and things like this. But I'm always, because the Jewish experience, I'm always afraid that it's not going to be used against us. So let's pray to God that the human race will know how to use it for the better and not for the worse.
Amen. I want to conclude our shiur today, our class, our chavruta, learning together, just with a thought about life and the importance of reminding ourselves to laugh. You'll find that within these parshiot, that the word laugh comes up quite often, right, Rabbi?
Of course.
By Yitzchak means
he will laugh.
He will laugh. Abraham is approached by the angels. Sarah's in the tent, and they say, and God says, in a year from now, you'll have a child, 9 months from now. And she laughs. It's a very interesting tete-a-tete, by the way. She says, I didn't laugh, and God said, oh, yeah, you did. It's almost crazy, right? How that goes back and forth. Yeah. Very real. And then when Lot approaches his son-in-laws to leave, they say they treated him like he was a clown. And the word in Hebrew is very similar to laughing.
Kemetzachek.
Kemetzachek.
Yeah.
So what I'm taking out of that is, and you can take something out of each word in the Torah, is to remind ourselves that in this time of perilous anti-Semitism, of dangerous anti-Semitism, of which we saw this past week in Amsterdam, of which we see on the streets of Toronto and New York, and all over the world, that we have to remember to laugh. We have to remember that that emotion or that action is inherent to what we learn within the Torah. It's the idea that people found happiness from within, even in the most difficult times. Rabbi, in conclusion, is there a word? This is a tough question. I'm interested in your answer. Is there a word you can take out of this parsha that you would like to conclude our class with today?
But I would say I want to explain the issue of like laughing. When are we laughing? What causes us the laugh? You know, when you hear a good joke and you laugh, what is it exactly that causes us to laugh? And I think that there are many research about it. I think the main answer is the element of surprise. Like you hear a story, and like lo and behold, something is happening against everything that you thought about. Like you had a train of thought going one direction, and the end of the story is so different from what you expected. And then you laugh, like it's like, wow, I did not expect it, or something like this. And I think that's the story of the Jewish people. Like people will be surprised by us. Will be surprised, you know, with everything that we are going through. People
Nice.
might think, and maybe they thought over history that they will be able to eliminate the Jewish people. This is something that is about to disappear. And we always laugh because, like, the train of thought is going one direction, and here we come from the Holocaust, from the Inquisition, from the Roman Empire, and we are here. That's the
Nice.
greatest laugh of history.
By the way, Viktor Frankl said that laughing, and he was talking about humor even within Auschwitz. He said it's a tool of survival.
100%.
Right?
Because again, it enables you to see things from an unusual angle. And hope is exactly that.
Very
So
good.
hope and love must be connected.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. The series is called Parsha and Prose, and we do it every single week, God willing, for a long time. We hope that you join us again. And until then, let us say with all of our hearts, with laughter in our character, Am Yisrael Chai, be proud to be a Jew.
Am Yisrael Chai,
Am Yisrael
100%.
Chai, right, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for a beautiful job. It was a very lovely, lovely class.
Thank you. And as you said, I feel that we are in a chavruta at this time, and that's the way I perceived this podcast. We are chavruta. We learn together.
Amen.